Thank you for joining us here on CBS News Boston. I'm meteorologist Jacob Wycoff. In just a few minutes, we are set to speak with astronaut and Needham, Massachusetts native Suni Williams. You've probably heard her name quite a few times in the news the last couple of months. So who is she? Well, Suni Williams was born in Euclid, Ohio, before moving to Needham, where she would go on to graduate high school. She has a Bachelor of Science in Physical Science from the U.S. Naval Academy and a Master in Engineering from the Florida Institute of Technology. But it doesn't end there. Suni was selected as an astronaut in 1998. She's now in her third mission, spending 450 days and counting aboard the space station, which is fifth place for the most days from anyone on the International Space Station. She's also a pro at spacewalks, currently in second place for cumulative spacewalk time by a female with 50 hours and 40 minutes. She's also a really highly decorated member of the U.S. Navy, earning multiple Defense Service and Navy Commendation Medals. She was also given the Humanitarian Service Medal for her distinguished service. So the big question is, how did we get here? Here's a timeline to break it all down. Starting on June 5th, NASA astronauts Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore launched aboard the Boeing Starliner spacecraft for its first crewed flight, scheduled to return to Earth 8 days later. The next day, they arrived on the International Space Station. But a short time after, some issues were observed with the Starliner's thrusters. And on June 14th, NASA and Boeing delayed the return of the Starliner and its crew to June 22nd. Now, on June 21st, the pair also once again adjusted the return date again to after a second spacewalk to occur on July 2nd. And just 7 days later, they took that return date from the calendar, saying they needed more time to test the Starliner. The Boeing Starliner would eventually return to Earth on September 7th, but empty, no crew on board. Now, fast forward to September 28th. The SpaceX Crew 9 mission launches with astronauts Nick Hague and Alexander Gorbanov on the SpaceX Dragon spacecraft. The next day, September 29th, the crew docked with the International Space Station. And as of right now, William and Wilmore's return back to Earth is expected sometime next year aboard the SpaceX Dragon. Now, the Falcon rocket blasted off from Cape Canaveral, Florida last month. On board the capsule, those two crew members, but also two empty seats. The goal, to get back the two astronauts after their months-long delay. CBS's Manuel Bojorquez has more.
Full power and liftoff.
NASA astronaut Nick Hague and a Russian cosmonaut are now in orbit with two empty seats. Those seats are needed to bring astronauts Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams back to Earth.
This mission is bigger than any one crew. It's bigger than any one person. And so we've got a dynamic challenge ahead of us.
I'd like to extend our congratulations to the entire Crew 9 team.
Wilmore and Williams were part of the first crewed test flight of Boeing's Starliner capsule. And though it got them to the space station back in June, problems with its propulsion system prompted NASA to look for another ride.
This was not the very first option. We wanted to take Starliner to the completion and land it back on land at home. But, you have to turn the page and look at the next opportunity.
But it meant bumping two astronauts off this mission, Zena Cardman and Stephanie Wilson.
I would be happy to give up a seat for them. If that is the safest thing, that is what's most important. We need to return them safely.
Even if all goes as planned, Williams and Wilmore will have to spend another 5 months in space because this mission is not set to return to Earth until next February. Manuel Bojorquez, CBS News, Kennedy Space Center.
And once they return to Earth, Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams will become the first astronauts in history to fly to space or fly in space aboard 4 different spacecraft: NASA's Space Shuttle, Russia's Soyuz, Boeing's Starliner, and SpaceX's Crew Dragon. Now, we are just moments away from being joined by Suni Williams. Mission Control in Houston and the International Space Station are just doing some of their final checks. Now, just real quick, how did we get here? Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore were selected as the astronauts for that first crewed mission for the Starliner. After some concern was noted on the spacecraft, the decision was made to return to Suni and Butch while on a different spacecraft. Their original 8-day mission has turned into what will be an 8-month trek. We are definitely very close to being joined by them If we could just see what is going on with them right now. Read my line here. All right. So, station, this is Jacob Wycoff from WBZ. How do you hear me?
From WBZ. How do you hear me?
Hey, Jacob, it's Suni Williams. How are you? I got you loud and clear.
Awesome, Suni. It is my honor right now to be joined live from the International Space Station by native and member of the Astronaut Hall of Fame, Suni Williams. Suni, thank you so much for joining me today. I have to ask you right off the top, last night, amazing celestial treat, the Aurora Borealis. Were you able to see it, and what do these type of astronomical events do to inspire others?
Yeah, I'm really glad people got out to see it. I got a couple emails from friends all over the world, actually, who were able to see some amazing lights last night. And of course, yeah, there was activity from the sun, and our mission control gave us some heads up, and we were out there, and it was overwhelming. You usually think the northern lights or the southern lights are green, but you got this amazing red hue yesterday, and it was just filled up the sky all around from the cupola. And you know what? This makes people stop and think and about other things beside for what's going on Earth. It's sort of what we do every day. We have the opportunity to be up here looking out at through the cupola or wherever, and thinking about things that are a little bit bigger than ourselves, our traffic jam that we're in and stuff like that. And hopefully these type of things makes people stop and wonder and think about the universe and think about how things have formed, or, just wonder, just ask questions. And so that's, I think, what's really cool.
Now, take me back, Suni. Did you always love space as a young girl, or what was that sort of aha moment that you decided to be an astronaut?
I've thought about this question because not really. I didn't really think about being an astronaut. I never thought I would be qualified, be able to do this until a lot later in life when I was a test pilot. But, thinking back to when I was a kid and growing up in Needham, I had some great science teachers, and I loved science. Mr. Perkins, I remember from 7th grade, for example, Mrs. DiNapoli from 6th grade, and then, into Mr. Tomkowitz from Needham High School, and for biology, for example, they left an impression. I remember their names, right? And so I've always loved science, and math was one of those things that just came easy to me. So I guess those two things, that foundation from the Needham Public Schools, helped me through my career. Becoming an astronaut was one of those things. When I grew up, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin walked on the moon, and I thought, wow, that would be super cool. And I became a helicopter pilot and thought, hey, I've got the vertical landing skills to maybe land on the moon one day. So that's sort of why I applied.
So after 3 trips now to the International Space Station, you have this incredibly unique perspective. Only about 600 people have been into space and even fewer aboard the space station. What is it like to see home out the window, and does that view ever get old?
First of all, the view never gets old. I mean, I have to keep myself from going to the window, and there's a bunch of us up here right now, and so sometimes the cupola and the lab window get a little bit crowded, so we have to give everybody a chance, and so it never gets old. You always want to go and take a look. I quiz myself. I go to the cupola, and I look out, and I don't look at the map beforehand and say, like, okay, where over the planet am I? Just to pick out features for each of the different continents, and it's just incredible. And when you look at the Earth that way, and also there's a lot of ocean, you think to yourself, like, wow, this is our one little planet that all of us are living on, and there's only so much land to allow us to live on. All the animals, all the plants, all the people that we ever knew are right here on this one planet, and you can't help but think, we all ought to get along. We shouldn't have divisions in our little on our little planet in humanity. But I wish everybody had the opportunity to take a lap around the planet and see it that way.
That is an amazing perspective for sure. Now, let's kind of rewind a little bit. You arrived on the International Space Station aboard Boeing Starliner. That was a mission that was scheduled for 8 days, and now you won't be returning until February for a total of 8 months in space. I know you're a veteran of these type of extended stays, but this kind of duration wasn't really expected. What do you kind of have to do mentally and physically to kind of get you through this stretch? Anything different from maybe previous missions?
We were prepared to maybe have a little bit longer stay, so that was definitely in the back of our minds. We have, Butch and I have all the qualifications to be up here on the International Space Station. Both of us have lived here before. Both of us had gone through the training. So we knew that, it's a test mission, so things might not work out exactly right as the plan that was dictated before we left. So we were prepared to stay for a little while. The extension and the unfortunate circumstance where we didn't get to come home in our spacecraft, that was a little bit added extra. And of course, there's disappointment there. We really wanted to finish out our mission in Starliner. So there was a switch and a shift in the thought process, and just to stay, to be here on board and to then get to fly home in a new spacecraft, a Dragon, which is a little bit different. And, I'm an optimist. I look at it always like glass half full. We get to learn and train and fly in another spacecraft, so that's pretty awesome. And in the meantime, we get to do all sorts of amazing science here on the space station. We've integrated quickly into Expedition 71 and then now have become Expedition 72 up here, and we're an integral part of the science as well as the maintenance and maybe some spacewalks in the future that will go on here. So they're keeping us busy. Don't worry. The mindset has switched.
Definitely. I have to ask, though, how were you given that news? Hey, Butch, Suni, you're going to be here a little while longer. What was your initial reaction?
Well, it took a process over the summer, right? It wasn't just one thing today and then another thing tomorrow. So I guess that was a good thing, because we got sort of warmed up to the idea that we're staying a little longer. But honestly, we were involved in some of not the decision, right? But we were involved in the technical discussions leading up to the decision. So it wasn't a surprise by any stretch of the imagination. We knew, the data that was out there that was coming in. We knew some of the, the thought processes from our management and our leadership. And, I backed them up. They opened the door for everybody to say their piece and to have a vote and understand where we stood with the issues that we had. And I think I believe the right decision was made that, hey, why take the risk when we have another spacecraft up here that we'll be able to come home in? So I think it was a process, I guess, long answer to your short question.
No worries. Now, when you were selected to be one of those members of the first crewed flight for Starliner, how was that experience? Did you have any extra nerves heading into the launch, knowing that you were the first to ride aboard that spacecraft?
I wouldn't say nerves. Of course, there's a little apprehension. It's the first time, but Butch and I are both test pilots. There's another test pilot up here too. This is the thing that what we're trained to do and we're excited to do. It's sort of like the epitome of your career to actually test a brand new spacecraft or a brand new aircraft. So I don't think we were really nervous. We tried to learn as much as we could about the spacecraft and understand as much as we could going into the flight so that we're prepared for any type of issues that we would have had. So again, I wouldn't say nervous or scared. I would more say excited and ready to go on our way up here.
Now, we kind of talked about it off the top here, but in your multiple trips to space, are there any storms that you may have watched through that cupola, through those bay windows, that kind of stick out in your mind? For instance, like Hurricane Milton just a couple of days ago.
Oh, yeah. On one of my previous trips, I think it was Hurricane Ike, that was filled up the Gulf of Mexico. Same for Milton. We were able to see, I think, New Orleans, but then after that, all the way over to the Atlantic coast was filled with clouds, and we could see, the storm, the swirling clouds of the storm. Incredible. The one before that starts with a K.
Katrina?
Kirk. I should remember that, Captain Kirk, right?
Yes.
Kirk, just before Milton was incredibly huge when it was forming, and the eye wall of that one was
station on Spacecraft 2. We're ready to
was
move
absolutely
to Spacecraft 4
distinct.
for our storage
Stand by.
conference.
All right. So you said Kurt was absolutely huge. That's really fascinating. Fortunately, Kirk didn't pose any threat to us.
Fortunately, Kirk didn't pose any threat to us.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you maybe, it seemed to sort of dissipate a little bit. Is that because it goes into cooler water? It went into cooler water going through the Atlantic?
Yeah,
I was sort of
absolutely.
curious why it dissipated a little bit.
Yeah, so it was in the middle of the Atlantic. I love the fact that we're having a back and forth here. This is fascinating to me. Yeah, so Kirk was in the open Atlantic, and as it went into higher latitudes, it encountered some cooler water, some shear, and then it just kind of poofed out a little bit, which we will take every single day. Those photogenic hurricanes in the middle of the Atlantic that don't do any damage.
Yeah, absolutely. I was a little bit worried for Europe. You know, we live in Houston, Texas, and we're threatened with this all the time, every hurricane season. And my mom lives in Florida, and so it makes you nervous a little bit. And I'm not sure the folks in Europe were prepared. So I was crossing my fingers that Kirk would dissipate. So I'm glad it did.
Absolutely. Now, I have to ask you, well, first, when we found out that we were going to be talking to you, we wanted to hear from some youngsters because it's not often that we have a direct line to an astronaut. This question from a little one, maybe from a school that you know a little something about. These are fourth graders from Suni Williams Elementary School in Needham. Take a listen.
We're wondering, what's it like to exercise in space, and what happens if you don't?
So their question there, they want to know what it's like to exercise in space and what happens if you don't.
Aha, these are kids after my own heart. Go Wildcats, by the way. So if you don't exercise while you're up here, you're going to lose any muscle that you have because, you don't have to lift up anything. You don't have to lift yourself up. You don't have to, run or walk, which creates the muscles in your legs. Nothing weighs anything. So your muscles will start to go away. And then the muscle that's included in that is your heart will start to get a little bit smaller too, because it doesn't have to work as hard to pump that blood from the bottom of your feet all the way back up to your heart. So we need to exercise. We need to do aerobic exercise, either running or on the bicycle. And then the other thing, the big thing that happens with lack of exercise or why we do exercise is your bone density starts to go away. So, we're formed on Earth because there's gravity, and that's why we look like we look. That's why we're formed like we are. That's why our bodies grew like they are. And so here on Earth, here in space, your bones go, hey, I don't need to be so strong anymore, and so your body starts to leach the calcium out of your bones, and so that's why we do lifting exercises to make sure the bones, particularly in your legs and your hips and your ankles, stay normal. So when we come back to Earth, we can walk without any problems.
And I know that you've participated in multiple races, and I believe first person to ever run a marathon in space. I don't even like driving 26 miles. What's it like to run a marathon in space?
Well, that was, I would say, as we say, in flight training, that was a blow-in head work. I don't think it was the smartest thing I've ever done in my life, but I'm stubborn, and once I got strapped on that treadmill and started going, I thought, oh gosh, now I really have to go. And I guilted my sister into running the Boston Marathon for real at that time, and that was a windy, rainy, cold, crappy day in Boston, and she was doing it, so I had to do it. And it was good. The whole reason I did it was actually just to emphasize that we have to work out up here, and working out is a great way of life. Every day do something. Kids get outside, go play. I think that was really, my motivation for doing it up here and having it advertised.
Now, the subject of diversity in science and technology is a growing topic. And for example, girls are rightfully seeing themselves in a lot of STEM professions. My daughter, Francesca, has a question for you.
Hi, my name is Frankie, and I go to Woodland Elementary School. What is it like being one of the first Indian Americans to go up into space?
So she wants to know what it's like being one of the first Indian Americans in space.
Well, thank you, Francesca. I don't really think about it that way. pursued a job which was flying and being a test pilot that other people were doing, and just wanted to do my best job. I was deployed on ships in the Navy, and I had lots of colleagues who were doing the same thing. Now, it is true at the time there was maybe only 2 of us women on a boat of 500 guys, 500 men. But I just tried not to think about that and just try to do my job and just do it and just be okay with it and have everybody accept me just as a professional. So I feel the same way about my career here. I've got a bunch of brothers and a sister on board here. We're just all just doing our jobs. We're working together. We're like a family. So I don't think twice about it. And my biggest advice for little girls out there is just don't have limits. Don't tell yourself no. Don't let anybody else tell you no. And just go for it in whatever field, whatever thing that you like to do, whatever you like to study, just do it. And don't let anyone tell you no.
And we have one final question from a friend, Sean. Take a listen.
I'm Sean from Middleborough, and I have a question for you. Can you see any planets from the space station?
Absolutely, Sean. We're not that much closer to those planets. If you really look at the distance of like where the moon is, where Earth is in comparison to where the moon is and where the planets are, we are just skimming above the Earth's surface. We're only about, 250 miles above the Earth, so not that far. And that leads me to 2 things. One, the atmosphere is pretty thin. That protects us from all this radiation, as well as the hot and cold of space, right? So that's this teeny little atmosphere is protecting us. But we do see planets from here, and they're crystal clear. Because we don't have that atmosphere, we don't have to see through water vapor. We can actually see those stars as bright stars and those planets as bright planets. One of our Russian colleagues took a great picture of Jupiter the other day. Granted, he had a big, huge lens on his camera, but we could see, the spot on Jupiter, for example. I can tell when I can see Mars in the sky because it's a little pinkish, but it's a crystal clear star. So that's what benefit we have seeing planets from up here.
I can imagine the view is pretty epic. Now, when I do stories, I sometimes hear the phrase, space is hard. Now, Suni, in your own words, why is space hard? And if it is hard, why is it so important that we continue doing this exploration?
I think the main reason I would say, this is Suni Williams' opinion, is because it makes us think outside the box. That's the answer for both of those questions. That's why it's hard. It's not intuitive to think about how to build an aquarium in space. That would work. It's not intuitive to think about how you would water plants if you wanted to make your own food up here. These are these questions, these things that we have to think outside the box and create new things to be able to be successful. Rockets are a whole nother story. Building rockets and launching rockets, a lot of, as I call it, small miracles, because rockets are filled with, thousands, if not millions of different little pieces and parts. And all those things have to work together at the right time to launch a rocket into space. And then when you get up here and live up here, that goes into the second, that what I mentioned in the first part of the answer here. You've got to think outside the box to be able to have people to live up here. A real simple example is the bathroom, right? The bathroom, you don't have a gravity assist. You have to have some other force function to pull, the number 1 and number 2 away from yourself. So all of these types of things are just, from the funniest thing to the most serious thing, everything has to be thought a little bit differently than on Earth. And that's sort of why it's hard.
Suni, before we let you go, I do want to just say that you have a ton of support, including from the governor of our Commonwealth. Do we have that sound?
Hey, Suni, it's Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey. We're just thinking about you and just want you to know that Massachusetts love is coming your way. We're sorry you're stuck in space. We've been so inspired by your perseverance, your courage, your good humor. We're so excited for you to come back home and see us in Needham, Massachusetts, where you grew up. Can't wait to hear all about your experience. Hang in there.
Wow, that's amazing. I have my Patriot shirt up here. I'm a little bit sorry that I'm missing in New England football. In the fall, it's the best time ever. Bruins are getting ready to start playing. You know, the Celtics, the Red Sox, of course. That was our summer. It was a tumultuous summer for us, maybe a little bit of a tumultuous summer for the Red Sox. But anyway, I miss Boston. I miss the sports. I miss the people.
Suni, we can't thank you enough for your time. It has been a real honor and pleasure to speak to you. We're all wishing for you and Butch's safe return. Godspeed to you guys. That was Suni Williams, veteran astronaut and Hall of Fame astronaut, I may add, on the International Space Station. This has been a special presentation on CBS News Boston and WBZ.com. To replay this interview, head to our YouTube page, youtube.com/CBS Boston. I'm meteorologist Jacob Wycoff, wishing you all blue skies.